Human feels alien girl's pulse through her fingers, but human realizes the pulse echoes his. Hello everyone. Before we begin today's story, I have a small favor to ask. Please hit subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you never miss our channel's new videos. It's quick, free, and the best way to support us in bringing you more dramatic stories. Your support means the world to us. Where are you watching from? Drop your city or country in the comments below. Thank you very much. Now let's return to our main character, Ethan Hale. The emergency lights flickered in the research outpost, painting the hallway in slow pulses of red and shadow. Metal creaked somewhere above him, a low groan moving through the structure like the breath of something sleeping. Ethan moved carefully, boots whispering over the grated floor, guided only by the dim glow of his wrist scanner. The temperature had dropped fast. He felt the sting in his fingertips even through the insulated gloves. A soft sound carried from the medbay ahead, almost like a breath caught in hesitation. He stepped inside. The room was dim, powered only by backup lighting. And there she was. Alice sat on the edge of the examination table, her blue-silver skin catching the weak light, reflecting it, as if holding a quiet piece of dawn. Her left hand trembled slightly, the injury minor but enough to unsettle her. Her violet eyes lifted toward him, cautious, steady, trying to understand him before trusting him. Ethan raised his hands gently. I'm here to help you. That's all. He approached slowly, letting her see every movement. The med scanner at her side was offline, its display dead. He knelt beside her, opening the portable diagnostic pad. I just need to check your pulse, okay? She hesitated. Lyria didn't allow touch easily. He'd been briefed, but the injured muscle along her wrist was swelling, and she finally extended her arm. Her fingers were cool against his palm. Ethan placed 2 fingers along the inner edge of her wrist. The moment he touched her, a faint warmth traveled through her skin, a subtle shimmer beneath the surface. He waited for her pulse. It came softly at first, then shifted. A second rhythm followed it, rising and falling like an echo. Ethan frowned, listening closer. The echo was matching his own heartbeat. Every time his heart pushed against his ribs. Her pulse answered half a beat later, like a quiet reflection in her body. Alice watched his expression, her brows drawing in. Is something wrong? Her voice was barely above a whisper. Ethan shook his head slowly, though confusion tightened his chest. Your pulse, it's sinking. She tilted her head, the light catching the silver in her hair. With what? He swallowed. With mine. For a moment, neither moved. The red emergency light washed softly over them, rhythmically brightening, dimming, like another heartbeat in the room. Alice looked down at their joined hands, then back at him. She wasn't alarmed, just wondering. The kind of wondering that felt like the quiet before a truth no one planned to discover. Her fingers tightened slightly around his, steadying herself, or maybe steadying him. Outside the med bay, another groan rolled through the outpost. But in that small room, everything felt still. Ethan wasn't sure what this meant for her. He wasn't sure what it meant for him. All he knew was that her pulse was echoing his, soft and certain, as if her body had decided something before either of them had words for it. The echo between their pulses lingered in the quiet med bay, subtle enough to question yet too real to ignore. Ethan kept his fingers lightly on Alice's wrist, not wanting to startle her, but the soft rhythm beneath her skin kept following him, like a gentle call and response. Another flicker rolled through the emergency lights overhead. The temperature dipped again, cold air brushing his neck. Somewhere in the corridor a panel clicked as the backup generator recalibrated. Alice finally withdrew her hand, but slowly, as if testing the air between them. She examined her palm, then looked back at Ethan with a calm curiosity. Does this happen to all humans? He exhaled a short breath. No, definitely not. Does it happen to you often? Her tone was genuine, not teasing. Ethan shook his head. Never. Alice absorbed that, her eyes narrowing slightly as if thinking through a problem she had known once in childhood, but had forgotten until now. The light shimmered off her skin when she shifted. Lyria do not sync with other species, she said softly. Our bodies protect us from that. It is not dangerous, but it is rare even among our own. Ethan ran a hand across the back of his neck, grounding himself. Maybe it is a glitch in our readings. The system is offline. Nothing here is reliable. But even as he said it, he knew it was not the machines that had synced their rhythms. A soft hum passed through the room as life support came back online. The air warmed slightly, a small comfort in the uneasy quiet. Alice watched the lights return, then turned her attention back to him. Your people, you sense danger through adrenaline. Ours, we sense it through resonance. Our bodies shift rhythm when something matters. Ethan felt a subtle tightening in his chest. Nothing painful, just awareness. And what does it mean that yours match mine? She paused. Her breath moved lightly, steady and even. I do not know yet, but I know it is not random. Before he could respond, the outpost shuddered, not violently, but enough that the instruments on the nearby tray rattled. Ethan stood quickly, steadying the table with one hand. I need to check the structural seals. The outpost lost power on the east wing. If the pressure doors did not engage, we could lose heat again. Alice slid off the table with surprising grace for someone who had looked so uncertain minutes earlier. I will come with you. He raised his eyebrows. You should rest. Your injury is minor, she replied, lifting her wrist slightly. And you do not know this place's vulnerabilities as I do. She was right. She had lived on the outpost for months, collaborating on sensor mapping while he had arrived only a week earlier. Ethan gestured toward the hall. Stay close. The temperature in Section 3 might still be low. As they stepped into the corridor, the lights shifted from red to steady amber, the sign that the emergency grid was stabilizing. Cold air still drifted through some of the vents, carrying the faint scent of ionized metal. Alice's steps were quiet on the grated floor, her eyes moving with a measured awareness that made Ethan trust her assessment more than any wall panel. The pressure monitor ahead blinked yellow. Ethan tapped the display. Seal is intact, but the lock is delayed. Could be a software stall. Alice leaned closer, her voice gentle. It is listening to the wrong rhythm. He glanced at her. Machines do not listen to rhythms. Some do, she answered simply. Before he could ask more, her hand brushed lightly against the control pad. The lock clicked into place instantly. Ethan stared at the panel, then at her. She offered no explanation, only quiet certainty. The hum of the corridor steadied. The amber lights held firm. And underneath all of it, Ethan felt his pulse settle into its familiar cadence. But when he looked at Alice, he could almost swear he sensed her pulse adjusting with it again, soft and steady, as if choosing the rhythm it preferred. The corridor settled into a soft mechanical hum, steady enough that Ethan finally allowed himself a slow breath. The lock Alice had touched remained sealed, its indicator light a calm green that did not match any documented behavior he knew. She stood beside him, quiet, watching the panel as if listening to something he could not hear. Her presence felt strangely grounding, like another stabilizer in the drifting outpost. You said some machines listen to rhythm, he said carefully. Did you mean it literally? Alice folded her hands in front of her, a thoughtful gesture. Lyria engineering is based on resonance. Machines respond to tone, pressure, and pulse. Not all of them, but many. Your systems here are different, but not entirely closed to outside influence. Ethan raised an eyebrow. Are you saying you tuned the lock? She considered that. Perhaps. Or perhaps it recognized intention. Human systems do not always behave as logically as humans believe. He almost smiled at that. The amber lights above flickered once, then regained their steady glow. The outpost was still fragile, but no longer in immediate danger. He glanced down the hall. There is one more seal I need to check. After that, we can restart the climate regulators. Alice nodded, falling into step beside him. Her movements were quiet, almost weightless. As they walked, the metallic floor vibrated faintly under their feet, a sign that the heaters were warming the structure from the inside out. Ethan stopped at the second pressure door. The panel showed a stable reading, but the temperature display hovered low. He pressed his palm to the metal. Cold. This one is slow to respond, he said. Alice stepped close enough that he could hear her breath carry softly in the chilled air. May I try? He moved aside. She placed her fingers gently on the control pad. Not pressing, just resting. Ethan watched her expression. Calm. Focused. Present. The lock clicked. The temperature reading rose by 2 degrees. He blinked. How did you do that? She lowered her hand, her silver blue skin catching the warming light. Your machines may not be designed for resonance, but they are not deaf to it. Some structures remember their intended rhythm, even when systems fail. Ethan studied her for a long moment. Then why did mine matter? Back in the med bay, Alice met his eyes, and for the first time he felt something unspoken settle between them, gentle but certain. Because your rhythm was steady when mine was not. Your calm reached me before your touch did. A soft warmth rose in the hallway as the climate regulators kicked on. The air felt lighter, easier to breathe. Alice wrapped her uninjured hand around her wrist, as if recalling the moment their pulses had aligned. Lyria are sensitive to imbalance, she continued. When I sensed distress, my body searched for stability. It found yours. Ethan rubbed his thumb along the edge of the panel. You make it sound intentional. Not intentional, she corrected softly. Instinctive. A small tremor passed through the walls, just a recalibration of pressure, nothing threatening. Alice waited for it to fade before speaking again, her voice quieter now. Most Lyria will only echo the rhythm of someone they trust. Ethan felt the weight of that, gentle but unmistakable. You trust me? She paused, listening to the air, to the outpost, to something he could not name. Then she nodded once, slow and sincere. My pulse answered yours. That is how my body chose. For a moment Ethan could not think of a single technical explanation. Only the soft glow of the lights, the warmth returning to the air, and the quiet certainty of her words. The outpost felt smaller somehow, not because of danger, but because of the closeness that had settled in the space between them, unforced and unplanned. Alice lifted her gaze toward the next corridor. The climate regulators will need a manual reset, she said. I know the quickest way. Ethan gestured for her to lead. Then show me. She stepped forward, her pace steady. And without thinking, Ethan found his own pulse matching the rhythm of her footsteps, an echo of the echo she had carried from him. The route Alice chose toward the climate regulator core wound through quieter sections of the outpost, where the lights glowed gentle white, and the walls no longer trembled with strain. Ethan followed a step behind her, watching the way she seemed to read the structure by sound alone. Every faint vibration, every shift of air pressure, she noticed before he did. The temperature continued to rise, settling into something comfortable. How long have you lived on this outpost? Ethan asked, mostly to fill the soft silence between them. 6 months, Alice replied. Long enough to understand its moods. It is a modest facility, but it tries to take care of itself. Ethan smiled at that. Machines do not usually have moods. Perhaps not for humans, she said gently. They reached a junction where the corridor narrowed and curved around the outer hall. Alice slowed, lifting her hand slightly as if sensing a distant tone. The regulator is ahead, but something is uneven in the airflow. Ethan checked the monitor on the wall. The readings looked normal, but he trusted her observation more. Uneven how? She took a quiet breath, gauging the subtle pressure in the air, like a heartbeat that hesitates. Her choice of words made Ethan's pulse shift involuntarily, a faint stutter of recognition. She noticed, her eyes flicking toward him for a moment, but she said nothing. They stepped into the regulator chamber. The tall cylindrical unit stood at the center, humming softly, its display showing that it was active but not fully synchronized with the outpost grid. Ethan knelt beside the console, tapping through the diagnostic menus. It is trying to reboot, but the last power surge forced it into safe mode. Can you fix it? Alice asked. Yes, he said, though the system lagged with each command. It will take a minute. While he worked, Alice circled the regulator, her fingertips gliding a few inches from the metal surface without touching it. Her eyes softened, listening to the vibrations. It fears restarting. Ethan glanced up at her, unsure whether she meant it literally or symbolically. Machines do not fear anything, he said. She gave him a small, patient smile. Then call it hesitation. Ethan returned his focus to the console, but her words lingered in the air. He entered the final sequence to restart the unit. A soft chime echoed through the chamber, but the regulator only hummed uncertainly, pulsing in uneven intervals. Alice stepped beside him. It needs a signal to follow. A signal? Ethan asked. From what? Alice looked at him with quiet certainty. From something steady. Ethan understood before she lifted her wrist toward him. Not asking, just offering. He hesitated only a moment before placing his hand gently beneath hers. Her pulse met his instantly, soft and calm, but with that familiar echo he had felt in the medbay. Alice turned to the regulator. Let it hear us. Ethan did not know how she intended to link something living to something mechanical, but as her pulse synced with his, The regulator's hum shifted. First a flicker, then a slow alignment, as if it was examining the rhythm and adjusting itself. The chamber warmed by a few degrees, the LEDs brightening to a crisp white. Ethan watched the readings scroll into balance. It worked, he said quietly. Alice lowered her hand, her expression serene. It remembered the rhythm it was built to follow. You reminded it. Ethan looked at her, startled. I did not do anything. You did. She shook her head softly. No, I only guided. The stability came from you. For a moment, the chamber felt larger than the outpost itself, as if the quiet resonance between them filled the space with something unseen. Ethan rose slowly, aware of how close they were standing, aware of how easily the world around him seemed to settle when she spoke. Alice glanced toward the corridor. The outpost will stabilize soon, but there is one more system that may respond to your presence. Ethan raised an eyebrow. Which system? She held his gaze for a long moment, then turned toward the door. The one that failed first. The one that caused the entire power loss. Come with me. I believe it will listen to you. Her voice carried a calm conviction that made Ethan follow without hesitation, unaware that their next steps would bring them into the heart of the outpost's most fragile secret. The corridor ahead grew dimmer as Ethan and Alice moved toward the oldest wing of the outpost, a section that had been partially decommissioned long before he arrived. The lights here glowed in a softer tone, almost bluish, and the hum of active systems faded into a quieter, deeper vibration that felt older than the rest of the structure. Alice walked with purpose, but her steps were slower now, as if the air itself carried memories she could hear. Ethan glanced at her. You said this was the first system to fail. What exactly happened? Alice kept her eyes forward. A fluctuation, a hesitation in its core. After that, the power grid unraveled. Machines do not hesitate, Ethan said gently, repeating her earlier words back to her. She offered a faint smile. This one does. They reached a sealed hatch marked with warning stripes faded from years of exposure. Ethan tapped the panel. It did not respond. It is offline, he said. No power. Alice stepped closer, her voice softening. Place your hand here. She indicated the center of the hatch. Ethan hesitated, then pressed his palm against the cold metal. For a moment nothing happened. Then the hatch vibrated faintly under his hand, as if recognizing warmth it had forgotten. Alice watched the subtle shift in his expression. It knows you, she murmured. The hatch unlocked with a quiet click. No lights flashed. No alarms sounded. It simply opened, as though relieved. Ethan lowered his hand slowly. How could it respond to me? I have no link to any of this equipment. Alice stepped inside the chamber first. Not a link, she said. A resonance. The room beyond was unlike the others. It was dim but not dark, illuminated by a soft glow from an array of suspended crystalline nodes along the walls. They pulsed faintly, each at its own interval, creating a gentle wave of light. Ethan stared. This is not human technology. It is Lyria architecture, Alice confirmed. We built this wing before your people upgraded the rest of the outpost. The two systems have coexisted, but not harmoniously. Ethan walked slowly between the crystalline nodes. The air here felt warmer, almost like standing near a living engine. What is this chamber for? Stabilization, Alice said quietly. It regulates the emotional and neural output of Lyria researchers, so their physical state does not interfere with their work. We project more than we intend. Machines help balance us. Ethan paused, absorbing her words. So when something affected you, the chamber felt it, she finished. And when I strained, it strained. Ethan exhaled slowly. The implications formed slowly but clearly. The power failure began when your balance shifted. Alice folded her arms lightly, not defensive, simply honest. I was overwhelmed. My pulse became unsteady. The machine echoed it, as it was designed to do. But the surrounding systems did not know how to translate that rhythm. Ethan stepped closer to one of the crystalline nodes. Its glow flickered, then steadied as his presence neared. Alice watched with quiet focus. It responds to you, she whispered. Ethan gave her a puzzled look. Why would it respond to a human? Alice moved closer, her voice calm, almost reverent. Because your rhythm is stable. Because your presence settles what mine disrupted. The soft light reflected in her eyes. The chamber follows the strongest steady signal. It is choosing you. Ethan felt the faint pulse under his fingertips as the node warmed slightly. Not hot. Just alive. What do you need me to do? He asked. Alice lifted her wrist slightly, where his fingers had once found her pulse. Just stand with me, she said softly. Let it hear the same steadiness that reached me. Ethan nodded, stepping beside her. She closed her eyes, letting her breath fall in sync with the rhythm she sensed from him. The chamber listened. The crystalline nodes brightened in gentle waves, pulsing not in confusion now, but in harmony. Alice opened her eyes slowly, turning toward him with a calm that had not been there before. It is stabilizing, she said. Ethan allowed himself a small breath of relief. So this is what it needed. She shook her head. Not the machine. Her gaze held his, steady and unguarded. Me. For the first time since the power failure began, the chamber felt whole. And so did something else between them. The crystalline chamber held its gentle glow, each node pulsing in long, steady waves that matched the calm rhythm Ethan carried without trying. Alice stood beside him, her breath soft and even, as if she had settled into a state her body had been fighting to reach all day. The stillness did not feel empty. It felt aligned, like two instruments tuning to the same note. After a quiet moment, Alice stepped closer to the central node and placed her palm a few inches from its surface. The light brightened, responding without hesitation. It is listening again, she said. Ethan watched her expression. The tension that had lived behind her eyes since the med bay was gone, replaced by something grounded and clear. So the chamber was never actually damaged, he said. It reacted to you. Alice nodded. Lyria's systems amplify emotion. When my pulse fractured, the resonance fractured with it. Ethan looked around the room, noticing the symmetry in the patterns, the faint warmth returning to the air. Why did your pulse shift so strongly in the first place? Her fingers lowered slowly from the crystalline surface. She hesitated. Because I was frightened. Ethan blinked. Of what? Alice turned toward him, the soft glow catching in the silver strands of her hair. Of resonance that should not have happened. Of my body recognizing something before my mind could understand it. Her voice did not tremble, but it carried truth in a way he could feel. Lyria do not echo the heartbeat of other species. Yet mine answered yours the moment you touched me. Ethan held her gaze, the steady hum of the chamber filling the space between them. I did not mean to overwhelm you. You did not, she said gently. That was what frightened me. It felt natural. The crystals pulsed in agreement, their light rising and falling like the slow breath of the outpost. Ethan stepped closer, not intruding, simply sharing the same circle of warmth. If this resonance is unusual, does it mean something specific among your people? Alice considered her words with care. It means alignment, a rare form of trust. Some call it a bond. Others say it is instinct choosing before thought. Ethan's pulse gave the smallest shift. Not fear, not even surprise, just awareness. She noticed. She always noticed. You do not need to respond, she said, soft but certain. I am only explaining why my pulse fractured earlier. My body recognized what my mind had not prepared for. Ethan searched for something rational to anchor her words, but nothing in human science matched the quiet certainty she spoke with. Instead, he asked, and now? Alice lifted her wrist slightly, as if testing the rhythm beneath her skin. Now it is steady. Because you are steady. The chamber lights deepened in color, shifting toward a soft gold, warm and gentle. Alice lowered her hand and took a small step back, giving the space its breath again. There is one more node we need to check, she said. If it has stabilized, the outpost will be fully restored. Ethan nodded. Lead the way. She moved toward a narrow passage at the back of the chamber, one he had not noticed before. The entrance was framed in a subtle curve, organic in design, different from the sharp human architecture in the rest of the outpost. This wing was built from Lyria materials, she explained as they walked. It listens differently. It feels differently. Ethan glanced at the walls, noticing faint luminescent threads woven into the structure. Everything here responds to resonance. Yes, she said. And today it has responded to you. They reached the final node, a smaller crystal set into the wall like the heart of the chamber. It was dimmer than the others, pulsing with an uneven rhythm. Alice frowned. This one holds the emotional archive. It is the most sensitive to imbalance. Ethan stepped beside her. What do you need me to do? She looked at him, eyes clear, voice steady. Just be present. It will listen if you allow it to. Ethan nodded, grounding himself, letting his breath settle into its natural pace. Alice moved closer to the node, and the moment she did, the dim light began to rise. Slowly at first, then more. The pulse smoothed. The rhythm aligned. The chamber accepted them both. Alice exhaled, quiet and relieved. It is whole again. Ethan watched the soft waves of light wash over the walls, settling the room into calm reflection. "So are you," he said. She turned toward him, the glow outlining her features with gentle certainty. "Yes," she whispered. For the first time today, the resonance between them lingered, not demanding, not overwhelming, simply true. The chamber lights settled into a calm glow as Ethan and Alice stepped back into the main corridor, leaving the emotional archive steady behind them. The outpost felt different now, as if every wall and panel had taken a long breath after holding tension for too many hours. Ethan could feel the change in the floor under his boots, a quiet steadiness returning with each subtle hum of the systems waking back up. Alice walked beside him, her posture relaxed in a way he had not seen since their first encounter in the medbay. Her steps were lighter, her eyes clearer. "The outpost will restore full power within a few minutes," she said, listening to the soft vibrations passing through the corridor. "It is following the rhythm again." Ethan glanced at her with a half-smile. "And you?" She considered the question, her gaze moving toward the ceiling where a thin line of light brightened as the overhead grid reactivated. "I am following it as well," she said quietly. "Stability is easier when something steady is nearby." Ethan felt warmth in his chest, subtle but undeniable. They reached an intersection where the airlock doors stood closed, still offline from earlier. Alice paused, her eyes narrowing slightly as she looked at the control panel. "This door is the final test," she murmured. "If it responds, the entire outpost has recovered." Ethan placed his hand against the panel, expecting the same quiet recognition he had felt from the earlier systems. Nothing happened. He frowned. Strange. The others reacted almost immediately. Alice stepped beside him. "This one was closest to the source of my imbalance. It may hold the strongest memory of it." Ethan let his hand rest flat on the metal, steadying his breath. His pulse remained calm, even, the same rhythm Alice had grown attuned to. The panel flickered faintly, then went dark again. Alice touched her fingertips lightly to the surface, just above his palm. The glow returned, but unsteady. "It hears you," she whispered. "But something is interfering." Ethan turned toward her. "What would interfere?" "The system is intact now." Alice lowered her hand. "Residual emotion. Lyria architecture absorbs what we feel, especially fear. I projected too much earlier. It may still be echoing through the door." Ethan nodded slowly, understanding. "So what do we do?" She looked at him with quiet certainty. "Replace the last memory with a new one." She stepped closer, close enough that their shoulders almost touched, and placed her hand beside his on the panel. "Be calm," she said softly. "Let the system hear what steadiness feels like." Ethan did not have to force anything. His breathing remained natural, steady, guided by the presence beside him. Alice closed her eyes, letting her pulse fall in sync with the quiet hum of the outpost. And then, like a soft exhale from the structure itself, the airlock clicked. The lights shifted to green. The door opened. Alice opened her eyes, relief moving across her features. "It shows stability," she said. Ethan gave her a warm, steady look. "No. It shows you finally calm." Alice held his gaze for a moment that stretched longer than either of them expected. Something gentle flickered between them, not dramatic, not overwhelming, just true. Ethan broke the silence softly. "The outpost is fully restored." "Yes," she replied, her voice quiet, "but there is one more thing we have not addressed." Ethan raised an eyebrow. "What is that?" Alice placed a hand over the spot on her wrist where his fingers had first found her pulse. "The resonance," she said. "My body did not echo yours because of fear or imbalance." She lifted her gaze to meet his. "It echoed you because it recognized something." Ethan stepped closer without thinking, the warmth of the corridor rising around them as systems continued to come back online. "Recognized what?" Alice breathed in slowly, her voice steady, unafraid. "A heart that speaks clearly enough for mine to answer." The outpost hummed softly around them, alive again, as if listening to the quiet truth settling between them. The hum of the restored outpost settled into a quiet backdrop, as Ethan and Alice stepped through the newly opened airlock. The lighting in this wing was softer, warmer, as if the systems themselves were adjusting in response to their steadier pulses. The corridor curved gently, leading them toward a viewing deck that overlooked the frozen landscape outside. Alice walked slightly ahead, her posture composed but her breaths carrying a subtle tremor that did not come from fear. Ethan sensed it, the same way he had sensed the shift in her pulse earlier. When they reached the deck, the large window revealed the moon's surface stretching out in pale blues and silvers, lit by distant starlight. The scene was quiet, almost sacred. Alice stopped at the glass, her reflection merging with the icy terrain beyond. "There is something you should know," she said quietly. Ethan joined her, giving her space but staying close enough that she could feel the steadiness she had come to rely on. "Your resonance with me," she continued, "is not common. It is not random. Lyria bodies do not echo a foreign pulse unless there is a deeper recognition." Ethan studied her reflection. Recognition of what? Alice placed her hand lightly against the glass. "A bond instinct. My people believe that certain hearts are capable of aligning beyond logic or biology. It is rare even among Lyria, unheard of with humans." Ethan felt the weight of her words settle gently, not pressing, just clear. "So what happened between us earlier was not an accident." "No," she said. "My body responded to yours without hesitation. That is why the chamber destabilized. It amplified my reaction before. I understood it." Ethan considered this, the calm rhythm of his pulse steady beneath the moment. "And now that you understand it?" Alice turned to face him fully. The soft lights reflected in her eyes, giving them a depth he had not noticed before. "Now I know it was not a flaw. It was a truth." Ethan stepped slightly closer, careful, respectful, but certain enough that she did not step back. "And what truth is that?" She lifted her wrist, the same gesture she had made when his fingers first found her pulse. "That your rhythm speaks to me," she said, her voice low and sincere. "My people do not choose resonance. We answer it." Ethan looked down at her wrist, then met her gaze again. "And what do you want from me now?" Alice shook her head softly. "Want is not the word. I only ask that you understand the meaning of what occurred. You did not cause it, and you are not bound by it. But I cannot pretend it did not happen." Ethan let the silence breathe for a moment, feeling the stillness settle into something calm and grounded. "I do understand," he said, "and I am not afraid of it." Alice's breath caught, not in alarm, but in relief. The viewing deck lights warmed further, almost in response to the shift between them. She looked back out at the frozen expanse. "There is another reason I brought you here," she said. "Something the outpost has not revealed to you yet." Ethan raised an eyebrow. "What is that?" She pointed toward a faint glow beneath the ice far below, a soft pulse rising and fading like a giant heartbeat beneath the frozen crust. "The resonance we share awakens something in the planetary sensors," she said. "Something ancient beneath the surface." Ethan felt a quiet shiver trace down his spine, not from cold, but from understanding that the outpost's malfunction had been only the beginning. Alice turned back to him, calm and steady. "Your rhythm aligned with mine," she said softly. "And now the planet itself is listening." The glow pulsed again beneath the ice, slow and deep, as if answering. The glow beneath the ice pulsed again, slow and deliberate, as if the moon itself had awakened from a long and patient sleep. Ethan stood beside Alice, the viewing deck quiet except for the steady hum of restored systems and the faint vibration carried through the floor. Alice watched the distant light with an expression that blended awe and understanding. "This world has always been sensitive to resonance," she said softly. "It records emotion, memory, pulse. But it has never answered anyone before." Ethan kept his eyes on the glow. "Why respond now?" Alice turned toward him, the warm deck lights catching the silver in her hair. "Because something shifted today. Your presence created a balance the outpost has never known. Even the planet felt it." Ethan frowned gently, trying to anchor her words in human logic, but the quiet truth in her tone left little room for doubt. "Are you saying the planet reacted to our resonance?" "Yes," she said. "It listened." And it replied. A soft tremor rippled through the deck, not threatening, simply acknowledging. Alice lifted her hand, resting it on the glass. Lyria myths speak of places where the land itself responds to those with aligned pulses. I never believed them. I thought they were stories for younglings. Ethan stepped closer, studying the reflection of her palm against the starlit ice. What does it mean? Alice breathed slowly, feeling the faint echo of Ethan's heartbeat settle beside hers. It means the planet accepts you. And because it accepts you, it accepts me again. Ethan looked at her, sensing a depth behind her words that had nothing to do with geology or data. Is that why you brought me here? Partly, she said. I wanted you to see what your resonance awakened. But I also needed to face the truth the outpost forced me to confront. She lowered her hand from the glass and turned toward him. The lights dimmed slightly, shifting into a warm, gentle tone that matched the quiet around them. Humans speak of instinct differently, she continued. But for Lyria, resonance is more than recognition. It is permission. It allows us to be honest without fear of imbalance. Ethan's pulse steadied, the familiar rhythm that had guided her through the unstable systems. Honest about what? She stepped closer, not out of impulse, but out of certainty. About what my body knew when your hand touched mine. About what calmed the chamber. About what brought the planet to life. She lifted her wrist, placing it gently against his, aligning their pulses once more. My heart is echoing yours because it chooses to. Not out of fear, not out of instinct alone, but out of recognition. Ethan felt the soft alignment of their pulses, the same quiet echo that had startled them both hours earlier, now deliberate and calm. And you are not afraid anymore, he said. Alice shook her head. No, because fear comes from uncertainty, and I am no longer uncertain. The glow beneath the ice pulsed again, matching the slow rhythm between their wrists. Alice looked down at their joined hands, then at Ethan, her voice barely above a whisper. Your heart steadied mine. And now, no matter how far we travel from this place, a part of my pulse will always answer yours. Ethan did not speak. He did not need to. The outpost hummed softly around them, the planet breathed beneath them, and the resonance that bound them settled into a quiet, undeniable truth. The final wave of light rose beneath the ice, warm and gentle, as if offering its silent acknowledgement of what had been forged. And for the first time since their pulses had aligned, Alice let the moment speak for her, standing beside the human whose heartbeat had become the rhythm her own chose to follow.